Thanks for staying up later. Paul Reiser was here a while ago, but that was long before Mad About You, the big success on NBC. How, if at all, has this changed your life?
How has it changed my life? I don't know, it's changed my life. It's just fun to be doing a show that I'm really happy doing and happy viewing. You know, it's very satisfying to look at a show and say, boy, if I wasn't in the show and I wasn't involved, I would watch the show, I would enjoy it. So that kind of feels good.
As a writer and producer, this is pretty much your sensibility, your taste, your vision up there.
Yeah, yes. It's very much. I mean, I created it with another guy, Danny Jacobson, who is our head writer and exec producer, and there's a lot of, as opposed to stand-up, there's a lot of people involved with a show, you know, and it's sort of, it would be unrealistic to say that it's a one-person thing. There's a lot of great writers and you know, and a lot of people mixing the soup.
Not that you do it solely, but
a lot of times they stay up, they watch this show, and if I don't say that, then I get a lot of, you know.
Well, now you're covered.
I'm covered.
Now you're covered.
So now, yeah, they do nothing. They do nothing, Bob. It's me.
Well, you have to have an entourage, though. You have to have some people to thank so that you look gracious when you pick up the Emmy.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to have some little people surrounding you.
I'm still looking for little people. Most of the people I'm getting, they're too big.
Well, you come to the right place. My Two Dads, for example, the show you did before, was successful. And from what I've read, you know, you enjoyed being on it. You have only nice things to say. But that wasn't your vision. That wasn't how you saw yourself. Certainly not for the next 5 years.
Right. And it's funny, once I came to terms with that, it was a lot easier to say, it's sort of like somebody who manufactures something that he may himself not use in his home. You know, I realized that's not a terrible thing. You know, I make this product, I make garden hoses, and I myself don't have a garden. All right, you know, that's not a crime. So the show was, you know, a fine show, and a lot of people enjoyed it, but it wasn't, to my taste, what I wanted to see, and really what I wanted to do. And so as a result of that, though, it really gave me the experience and the knowledge of what it takes to do a show, and it also fortified my conviction that next time I do this, I really want to do my show. I want to do a show that I want to see, that is, in fact, my sensibilities, and that is the show I want to do. And it was a lot easier, personally, to know that because there was no option. If it wasn't going to be that, I wasn't going to do something else. I wasn't going to take this idea and then say at the last minute, how about if you put, you know, an orphanage comes and lives next door? I go, well, no. So the inception was really very clear. I mean, what happened actually was I wasn't particularly looking to do a show, and I was approached to come up with something, and in the interim I was out doing a lot of stand-up. And the more I did stand-up, the more I realized this is really what I would want to do. How would this translate, this material, the stuff about relationships, the intimate kind of stuff that I like to play with on stage, how would that translate? And it was really a matter of snipping away all the other stuff, and I realized the show is really very low-tech. It's a man and a woman, and it's the relationship.
Oh, God, we're going to miss Fran's party.
What is the big deal with Valentine's Day? Yeah, I mean, it's a made-up holiday. Nobody even knows who this Saint Valentine guy was.
He was a Roman priest who defended the Christians and was beheaded by Claudius II on February 14th, 269 A.D.
No, I know, but I mean, when did the little, you know, the candy hearts with the messages come in?
In the middle of the 16th century, the Prussians made an offer.
Oh, all right, but the point is, I resent being told when to be romantic. You know what I mean? Why should I love you any more in the middle of February than I would on, say, August 21st? You know what I mean? To me, every day with you is Valentine's Day.
So in other words, you forgot to buy me a card.
Here's what I'm saying. If you could get cameras into the house, into the bedroom, that's what I would want to see. And that's when I feel the show is succeeding at its best, and what people respond to. And we get letters, and people say all the time, it's like, wow, you must have cameras in my bedroom, man, because that's exactly what happened in our home last night. And you go, good. That's what we tried to do.
How much of what would work for you on stage in your stand-up act could be applicable here? If you know, just made it fit. Or are there things that are just, no way, that's a stand-up thing, doesn't work?
There are some things that involve, there are things that on stage are a bit more presentational and they're bigger, that if you did in the show, might pop the frame. you know, sometimes I'll feel, boy, if I really stopped and did 60 minutes of standing here and spritzing and going off about this guy in the store, and then he came in, it might pop it and look like performance. But the reality is, and this is something I'm really now learning, and we're, you know, into our second season, that the show has to be lifelike. But I sometimes do that in my house. I may come home and go, you're not going to believe what happened. And then I will do, I'm not performing, but I'm telling a story. And if it rings true enough, then we can do it. But the real difference is that there is no setup involved on the TV show. For example, if you're on stage and you want to say, you know, you're telling a story that happened with, you know, your wife, you went out with friends, you go, so here's the thing, we go out and this is just happened the other day, blah, 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 and you tell the story. I come home and my wife says to me, on the show, you cut out all the introduction, and you just do it. You open a door and you come home and you play it. And that's real fun, to just jump into the story and like I say, bring the people in. It's sort of like, sometimes you tell a story and you go, well, you had to be there. My wife and I were saying, and she said this and I said that, and well, you had to be there. To me, this show is, okay, you're there.
And a lot of times, like you say, your stage persona, or the persona, I guess, that you'd be in just sitting here talking if you were making me and the crew laugh, fits right in. So you say something that has the same inflection, the same meter that I associate with you on stage. If you go to the mall on a Saturday with Helen Hunt's character, you're standing there saying, you have to understand, this is time you never get back. Now, that could be lifted right out of a riff you're doing on stage.
Yeah, it's... By design, I really wanted to make that as seamless a transition so that I wouldn't have to work so hard. Because, I mean, what's fun about this is that there are little golden moments that pop up in life and snippets of conversation that may not be a whole basis of a story, but they're little nuggets and that really tickle me. And the show is now, you know, it's really off and running, and what's fun about writing it, we can take these little nuggets and just say, boy, that goes in here. You don't have to force it, because the closer it is to our lives, in fact, the more successful it is and the more honest it is.
And that's what people react to in the show. Like you said, whatever the storyline is, whatever the plot is, that's just a framework into which these little moments can fall.
Yeah, that's the real fun of it. And the challenge of it is, you know, in the beginning, it's funny, in the beginning, we wanted the shows to be very minimalist. It's like we didn't want big stories. And you find that as a viewer, you need a story. You need something to make people, so it's, even if it's as small as we got to go return the shirt, you know, we got to go buy a couch, we're trying to go to the movies. Just something that from which things can go wrong. And that seems to be our theme now. Events that we fail at. We can't get out of the house. We can't get into bed. We can't have a quiet evening. And that also rings true to me, because I think that's what you deal with on a daily basis. Like, okay, here's the day I had planned. Here's the day that happened. Where did I go wrong?
Sorry about dinner.
It was an effort.
Thank you.
No, I meant to eat it. It was an effort.
How close is it, allowing, obviously, for all kinds of artistic license, how close is it to your own life? What does your wife, Paula, say?
Well, it's very similar, because now, since the show's been doing so well, we've brought 3 cameras into our home just to feel like a studio.
It's a good idea.
Yes, and so now when I go to work, there's no transition at all.
I think you should always be in practice.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, the show goes into a hiatus, you get rusty, you lose the groove.
Exactly, and a lot of times now, you know, my wife will say something, and she'll make a very good argument, and I'll go, let me just meet with the writers, and I'll come back and answer that, you know, so that time delay has changed. I've always said it's not biographical, you know, it's not exactly my life, you know. I don't live in New York, I'm not a filmmaker, but the stories that generate are not really necessarily true, but the conversations are. But hopefully, I don't know if it was Cosby or somebody once said very wisely that the things that are the most private are also the things that are the most universal.
I read somewhere, I can't remember who said it or wrote it, but they said, if Seinfeld is a great show about nothing, Mad About You is a little more ambitious. It's a great show about nothing much.
That's great. It's so funny, because when I was developing the show, I think Jerry I don't know if it had aired or had just been on. I was talking to some people, and some studio people who were involved with Jerry when Jerry's show was starting up. And I said, you know, I really want the stories to be about nothing. And they all kind of smiled. I go, that's what Jerry said. And he soon found that it can't be about nothing. Because that's what's so funny. And I love Jerry's show. It's brilliant. It's so not about nothing. Those are the most complicated, you know, plots in the world. You know, and it's about nothing in the traditional TV sense. You know, there's no lesson, there's no whatever that is. But that ain't about nothing at all. Those are brilliantly interwoven plots. But it's just, I mean, what is similar is sort of a sharing the fascination with minutia, you know, and to me, if somebody says five sentences to me, I'll always be distracted by just one word in the beginning of the whole thing that it's like, what did you say over there? You know, and it's those detours that interest me and that, to me, make the show fun. So it's like, yeah, we get a little story going, and then you can realize that it's, while you're discussing the big issue, you do 10 minutes about telling the other person how to brush their teeth. You know, and like that's
right.
A great marriage moment to me. It's like, two people are never going to really be the same person, and yet you constantly try. It's like, why do you floss like that? That's too much floss. You shouldn't use that much. You do it your way, I'll do it mine. All right, you know.
Whenever somebody is perfect for a role, it always seems like it had to be that way from the beginning. Was it like that when Helen Hunt walked in? Forget everybody else. She's the one?
Yeah, it really was. I think to both our mutual surprises. I had known Helen a little bit, and I knew her work, and I had met her a few times and thought she was really cool. And I sent her the script, and I said, we're going to be making this pilot, just see if you like it. And she said, well, I'm not really looking to do TV, but sure, I'll be happy to read it. And she called later that afternoon, I love it, now what? Now I'm scared. So we got together, we talked, and I assured her that the show that she wanted to do was the show I wanted to do. And she was very tentative about it. And meanwhile, we must have looked at 100 actresses. And she came over to my house, and we had just a reading with Danny Jacobson and Helen and myself. And she started doing the scene. And the reason she's so good, not only because she's just a great actress, but she's very rooted. Everything she does is real. I mean, you watch her, and she's just alive. And so we're sitting, and I'm reading the pages, and she can't just sit and read. She has to do something. So the scene was about, well, we're leaving the house, and we're cleaning up breakfast. So she goes to my sink, and she's just cleaning up dishes, and she goes, we should really get going because, and I said, what? Going? Oh, the script. She totally threw me out of the script. It says, we must get going. But she was so convinced, I had no idea what she was talking about. And she just threw me. And it just felt absolutely right the first time we did it. And we went up to the network together, and we went, and that was, you know, they said, well, as soon as you find the women, you know, we're going to go with this. And we just brought in Helen, and they went, bingo, there it is.
What are you doing?
Go back to sleep.
It's 2 in the morning.
I know, I was born at 2:01.
Yeah, so?
Shh. I'm watching myself turn 30. Okay.
About you, baby. Yeah, I'm mad about you.
And we're back with Paul Reiser. I read a quote of yours, it might have been a while ago. You're growing up in New York, and your dad's take on you wanting to be a stand-up comic was someone should do that only for the same reason they become a boxer.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Because in his generation, entertainment was sort of this off color, and it was somewhat shady, you know, and if you needed to get yourself out of the ghetto or you know, the tough neighborhood, well, what were the meal tickets, you know? You be an entertainer, or you become, you know, a fighter.
But only if it's your only option.
Right, right. And everything else, the more normal things were, you know, a business, and he was a businessman. So he didn't quite see it, and we never knew anybody who was in the entertainment business. And that was my take on it as a kid, too, that I had no idea how you would become that. I just thought, you know, there are human beings, and they're a society, and then you watch Red Skelton and Joey Bishop, and you watch these people, but you can't be there. They're already on the TV. They already cast those jobs, you know. And so for me, it was what helped me figure out that I wanted to do it was knowing that there was some possibilities, these clubs in New York that sort of funnel you from the real world. This is how you could do that. I went, wow, I'll check it out.
When did your dad become convinced that, all right, that was a decent choice?
it wasn't until the first Tonight Show, which was a very highly visible thing, and that was in a coinage that he could understand. You know, it's like anything short of that didn't help. And if he said, well, Dad, I'm emceeing the Saturday Night Show at Catch a Rising Star, you know, it meant nothing. And even if you, well, did Evening at the Improv, did this little TV show, didn't, but Johnny, and then also was the big stamp of approval was, and Johnny seemed to like you. Because he had gone on, Johnny seemed very upset with you. Then it's like, what, you upset Johnny, now you happy? I told you not to go into that.
And you know, that's something, and this is not a knock on anybody else who does a similar show, now or sometime in the future. That's something that's over now.
Yeah.
That generational bridge that Johnny Carson provided, because even to the end, he was eternally hip. You couldn't say he wasn't a hip guy, but his stamp of approval meant something to your dad. It meant as much or more in its own way to you.
Sure.
That's gone now.
Yeah, I think it's really true. And now, you know, the people who have the shows are more peers. So obviously, I go on Dave Letterman. I want to do a great job for me, but also for Dave or with Jay or whoever. But it's not the same sort of paternal figure. And it was always. I know this is true for everybody I've spoken to. It was a very gratifying thing when you got one of these from Johnny. You know, you got that. You go, Johnny liked it, and it was more important than just being invited back. It's like it was gratifying, because for me, I remember first doing stand-up, doing the Tonight Show was as far as you could see. You know, you go, well, I'll do this and I'll do this, and maybe someday I'll be on the Johnny Carson show.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, basically, you should stay away from two types of people when getting directions. Always the worst. Little kids and very old people. You know, between 5 and 95, you've got a shot. It's, for different reasons. See, little kids, in all fairness, little kids don't drive. All right, which is why, by the way, I think they don't get good jobs. See, now, the old guys are worse because they don't know that they forgot. See, they used to know. They really did, but not anymore. And the problem is, see, they love talking to you, so they will take their time. They'll just stall. Say, what do you want, the stadium? All right, okay. The stadium. The stadium, all right. What, are you going to a ball game? See, they overdo it. They want to be nice, but they give you too much. They'll give you landmarks. They tell you about things you're never even going to see. And you're trying to memorize it. He goes, listen, kid, if you go this way, you'll see an overpass, there's a high school, there's a factory, you'll see there's a train station, there's a garbage pail, there's a fat guy, you'll see there's a Howard Johnson's, there's a Wendy's, there's a dry cleaner, a laundromat, and a college, okay? You don't want that.
You think there'll be a time, 30, 40 years from now, when people will sit around and they'll talk about you and Jerry Seinfeld and this generation of comics, the way we talk about the guys that we imagine are all sitting around the Friars Club now, like the Buddy Young Jr. guys from Mr. Saturday Night?
I would love to think so, that there is this sort of lineage, but I think, you know, I think not. And it's sort of what we say about Johnny, like there's certain golden moments, and maybe this is just sort of the passing of life, and we'll always think that. But I remember years ago having these thoughts sitting with Seinfeld and Larry Miller and Mark Schiff and, you know, our group of comics thinking, wow, this must be just like Frank and Dean and Sammy and Joey Bishop. And then we'd all think, yeah, but they were better. They were cooler, you know. And I just know it was cooler to be them than us. But that's all right.
One thing that's universal, though. Anybody who ever got up on a stage, especially if he or she's a comic, had moments when they bombed, when it didn't work. And somebody told me, I'm not coming into this blind, I don't know where it goes, but I know there's a setup here, that you had a story from when you opened for Melissa Manchester.
Absolutely not true, man. I don't know where you get your stuff from.
Well, good night.
I can't believe you lasted this long with that kind of
research, faulty research.
I was on tour with Melissa Manchester 10 years ago, and I was having a ball. It was great, and we got to the Concord in upstate New York, in the mountains, and it was the first and only show that she came over to me before the show and said, listen, it's not going to go well. I want you to know that it's okay. I think you're great, but you're probably going to have a terrible time. I said, no, I'll be fine. It's the mountains. I'll be fine. She goes, the guy last year on tour with me left the stage weeping. I said, that's all right, but I'll kibitz him. I'll be fine. So I get up there, and in about a minute, I go, I'm dead. This is not good. They're old. They're angry. They're just, and they have clackers. They give them in the mountains. Why? I don't know. they give them little hammers. You know what it actually comes from? They were too old to clap. So this is like, this is too hard. This is just, they don't have the energy. Forget tennis, they can't do that. So they just, and they'll sit. So consequently, you don't know the difference between, boy, we love you, and boy, you stink. It's the same clapping noise. So,
and they don't have the energy to hiss either.
That's right. It's also the same for, we need more water. You know what I mean? So you have to sort of discern what kind of clack was that. And I'm up there a minute, 2 minutes, and I go, oh, this is not going to be good, but I have to do 20 minutes because she's has, you know, to get ready. So I don't know, I somehow got through, and she afterwards told me, I was ready the whole time because I knew you wouldn't last. I was amazed that you did. And so we go out and we're drinking in the bar and the whole band, and this guy comes over, and it's one of these guys who considered himself an expert, and he was going over to the band, you were good, and you were the comedian. And they went, yeah, that's right. And he goes, come here, puts his arm around me, big cigar. He says, let me tell you something, you know what your big problem is? Your material, it's very, very bad. That's what I see as your main weakness, would be the lack of goodness, the crappy quality that you have in your material. That's what I would think you might want to work on. And then he goes, I don't mean this in a bad way, not to offend you, but that's what I think.
Well, I feel as long as criticism is constructive.
Yes, if he can help you zero in on the arena, yeah.
Mad About You on NBC has Paul Reiser, the terrific Helen Hunt, and unlike the stand-up act, at least in the opinion of the guy in the lounge at the Concord, it has very, very good material.
See, I took his note and I went with it.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. Well,
thanks a lot. See you later.